Hello everyone, my name is Tim Lazaro. This is my website, timlazaro.com, and I've published several books and they're available on amazon.com. This one here that I'm going to give you a little bit of a review on is DNA weapon. And the query is, an alien weapon falls into terrorist hands. Now, we've all heard about Roswell, and we've heard all kinds of versions of Roswell. Well, this comes out of Roswell. The whole idea here is that 3 aliens crashed and 1 survived, and that on board the alien aircraft were horrendous weapons. And the idea was that the aliens were sent from 3 or 4 galaxies away to get rid of these weapons once and for all. They were to find a planet somewhere. It was more or less a suicide mission. Their orders were to find a planet somewhere, get these weapons, and put them deep in this planet, way down in the core somewhere, where they would never be found again. Well, anyway, one of these weapons is a DNA weapon. Now, this happens in 1947, and this alien spends like 3 years with, or more than 3 years, with a Dr. Bennett. And at that time, we really didn't know what DNA was. It wasn't until 1953 that they even started to develop these kinds of concepts. But anyway, the idea is that this weapon will seek out, you give this weapon the DNA of a person, it will seek out that person and it will kill that person. It will microwave their brain. So it's a miserable weapon, but it's a very selective weapon. And what happens is that in 1947, they didn't know quite what to do with that. So President Truman signs an executive order creating a Marine task force, probably like a platoon of Marines, and they dig a cavern in Nevada. It's like a Site 51, where these Marines are guarding these weapons. They're guarding these weapons in a place that nobody goes into, nobody's allowed into. An executive order is placed in Maryland, and these captains, a series of captains, Army captains, have these instructions to stay at this desk, and they have instructions on the wall that if a doomsday device, if something happens, a peculiar thing happens, then they are to call the White House and execute the executive order. So what happens is 2001 comes along, 60 years later, 50 years later, 2001 comes along, and we have 9/11, and that is a trigger event. So the captain at that time calls the White House, gets a meeting with the president. He brings the paperwork there, and the president looks at it, and they decide that they could use this DNA weapon. So the captain is given instructions to find out everything he can about these weapons and present it in like 2 weeks to the president so they can decide what they can do. So DNA weapon is to be used on terrorists. The problem is it gets lost and taken by terrorists, and now the terrorists have it. Now we got to get it back, and that's maybe too far into the book. But anyway, that's the concept of what I was thinking when I wrote this book. It's called DNA Weapon, and an alien weapon falls into terrorist hands. How do we get it back? Well, you have a nice day, and I hope you enjoy the website.